Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. Welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. Today I wanted to talk a little bit more on the concept of what is a virtual CISO. And a lot of the discussions about what is a virtual CISO really start with what is a CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer. A lot of times people think that a CISO is an extension of information technology. And there's a lot of truth to that in some ways, and in some ways it can lead you down a wrong path. There's certainly a technical aspect to a CISO, but there's more beyond that because a CISO generally is a business risk position. And sometimes when I explain that to people, it's hard for them to conceptualize what that is. So I like to frame it based on a model known as the three lines of defense model. And there are some variations to it, but the way I like to describe it in the terms of information security is pretty simple. So your first line is your operational management. So that would be your firewall management, monitoring with your SIEM, anything to do with antivirus. So those IT technical controls, that's more in the first line. The second line is risk management. So that's really, when you're looking at risk management, it's about understanding the risks that you have, identifying them, identifying their criticality, their priority, assessing what the risks are to the organization, and then determining a strategy for dealing with those risks. And there are several ways you can deal with that, all the way from mitigate the risk through controls to accept the risk as a business decision. And then third line is audit, which I like to say keeps like first and second line honest, but really what audit is doing is audit is making sure that what first and second line says that they're doing, they're doing. So the Chief Information Security Officer should fall under second line. And that's not to say that there's maybe a little bit of bleed over between second and first line and second and third line, but I like to keep that as clean as possible. I make it clear that the the CISO role, the risk management role, we don't perform audits in our virtual CISO engagements. We don't perform audits. We don't render an opinion, an attestation for third parties that, hey, we have looked at the controls of this group and they're fine, and you can look at this report that we've published. Rather, our role in the controls is to determine what are the best controls to meet a particular risk and to ensure that those controls are really designed properly and operating correctly. And you might be thinking, well, what is a control? The most common example that I like to use is either encryption or multi-factor authentication. With encryption, it's just simply, well, okay, are you encrypting your information, say, at rest? That's first thing. And then the second is, well, is this encryption strong enough? And there are levels of encryption. And as time goes on, those levels change because computers get more powerful and so forth. And then the third question is, how are you managing access to that encryption? And a lot of that comes down to encryption keys. So the CISO makes sure that all systems that have critical information works with first line to ensure that proper encryption is in place. And then third line will come into to evaluate, okay, you say that you have this in place, show me your configuration for your encryption of this database, for example, or show me how you're maintaining your keys, your encryption keys. It's a very important distinction to keep, in my opinion, the three lines separate. One of the arguments that I've used, and a lot of folks in the security industry use, for not having the CISO position within information technology is the chance for some sort of, I guess you would say it would be like I'm looking for the word here, conflict of interest. There you go. It's early in the morning. A conflict of interest. Pure and simple, IT's main goal is to make sure that the bits and bytes are moving, that people can get access to information and resources when they need it. And sometimes, just through human nature, security might take a back seat to that. And so making sure that things are separate ensures that you don't have that conflict of interest temptation. And there are other reasons as well, too, to keep it separate. I won't go into the further on this short video, though. And then, of course, third line, you definitely want audit to be independent in all aspects. You should not have audit, you really can't if you want an independent third audit. By definition, independent means it has to be separate, has to be independent. I think that also the lines should flow through each other. And what I mean by that is I don't feel comfortable often with IT directly engaging with audit because there isn't that second line to ensure that IT isn't, for lack of a better word right now, because again it's early in the morning, cooking the books. And most of the time that might be unintentionally. You want to make sure that the audit is really looking at the environment completely and holistically, because when all is said and done, the audit is supposed to be beneficial to the organization. It's the last chance to find gaps before something actually happens. And there are actually other checks and balances in place within second line as well with that too. But generally speaking, the audit is the primary tool for making sure that your controls that you have in place to protect yours and your customers' information are correct and operating effectively, and that you can show that to your third parties that, hey, we had an independent attestation of this. So, to summarize it, the virtual CISO is just like a CISO, should fit in the second line of defense. That's the risk management portion, because information security is about risk management. It should not be a part of first line, although it definitely has ties into first line, which is operational management. And it assists and often translates with audit for third line. Thank you very much. Stay secure.